greatly enjoyed the analysis we had from Jane and Lindsay's critique and argument for what we should do. I think this is an extremely dangerous situation. The slump could be deeper than even in the 1930s, which I remember. Slumps lead to war. That's what happened in the 1930s. Hitler went to the Germans. There were 6 million of them unemployed. He said, I'll give you jobs. And he did. He gave them jobs. He put half the unemployed in the arms factories, the other half in the army, and we had another war, and 105 million people were killed in 2 world wars in Europe. It also creates fear, and fear is a major factor in 2 ways. First of all, it makes the ruling class so frightened that they decide to be as tough as they can, and frightened people are very much tempted to force analysis, and that's where the Nazis and the BNP hope to benefit. But, you see, the second question is, why has all this happened? And I want, if I may, to broaden it out a little bit beyond the economic argument to the political argument, because this is not just an economic crisis. I think people understand that very clearly. And I was looking at Marx just to help me a little bit, and this is what he said about the nature of society, a very profound and shrewdish comment I've ever read. He said, technology discloses man's mode of dealing with nature, the process of production by which he sustains his life, and thereby lays bare the formation of his social relations and the mental conceptions that flow from them. And in a world of enormously expanding technology, who gets the power out of that technology and how they use it is the political background against which we're discussing the situation. He also said something else 150 years ago. He said, the recent commercial crisis in this country, as well as in America and Northern Europe, rotates around the successive speculation and abuse of credit. What are the social circumstances reproducing almost regularly these crises of self-decision, of credit speculation? If it was once traced out, we should arrive at a very plain alternative. Either they may be controlled by society, or they are inherent in the present system of production. In the first case, society may avert crises, and in the second, it will continue as long as the system lasts. And I think of Marx as a teacher, not as a sort of leader of a political movement so much, but as a teacher, somebody who helps you to understand what is actually going on. And you see, if you look back on history, I'm looking now politically and economically, from the very beginning of time, power has always been in the hands of rich people. And if you're rich, it's easy to get power. If you're powerful, it's easy to get cash. And whether you go right back to the original form of ownership, which was slavery, slavery was the ownership, actual physical, legal ownership of people by other people. And of course, the way this was maintained was the information system, now we'll call it the media if you like, that said to slaves, if you protest against this, you'll be flogged or executed, so they didn't. And that was the control mechanism then, and it goes right through the ownership of land, the ownership of resources under the land, the ownership of companies, into the modern international capital system. And that system has to be challenged if anything is to be changed. And I ask myself all the time, because I'm an old man, I look back on it all and try and understand it. I find it very, very difficult. How did it ever change? It changed when somebody said to somebody else, who gave him the right to do that to me? It was a moral question. And although we talk as socialists about economy and democracy and so on, I think we underestimate the fact that moral arguments have enormous power. We're always told, is it profitable, unprofitable, successful, unsuccessful? Is it right or is it wrong? Is an argument that lies at the heart of the socialist case. Now, Marx wrote a brilliant book on capitalism. He wrote a brilliant book on capitalism. Like anybody could have done that. But what was interesting to me about Marx's analysis of capitalism, he said it was wrong that some people should exploit other people. And I think this argument is one that we need to emphasize more strongly, because we are now in a situation where we are seeing a repetition in a new form of arguments that have always gone on. I was thinking the other day of the Peasants' Revolt. The Peasants' Revolt was against the poll tax. Why was the poll tax introduced? Because the Black Death had led to the death of a lot of workers, and therefore what was happening was the remaining workers could claim higher wages. So they introduced the first wages policy, the statute of wages, and then the poll tax, and people got up and said, we're not having it. Now, out of that came the Reverend John Hall, who said, things will not go well in England until everything is held in common. That was a socialist statement out of a religious basis, if you like, in 1381. Now, I find that gives me understanding of what's happening now, because nothing has ever changed, really. And when I say nothing's changed, I mean, the arguments remain the same. And then if you take another case, if you take the Levellers, I mean, the Levellers were a phenomenal group of people. And the Diggers, who were the sort of left of the Levellers, they said the earth is a common treasury. It is a crime to buy and sell the earth for private gain. Now, could you have a clearer political statement, socialist statement than that? Then Tom Paine said, God did not make rich and poor, he made men and women and he gave them earth to be their inheritance. Now that is a moral argument, and it relates to people, particularly people who are frightened, will respond to something as clear as that. And then, of course, you had Robert Owen, the cooperative movement, relating very much to what Lindsay said about competition. Everything has to be competitive now. Robert Owen said, why don't we cooperate? And that's a profound, all the municipal developments that occurred were examples of cooperation. And of course, you look at the toll martyrs who sent to Australia for forming a trade union, what came out of that was a realization by people that if you worked together, you were strong enough to beat your employer. And I think, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to anybody, I think the most revolutionary idea in the world is democracy. When I was 11, I bought Hitler's book, Mein Kampf. And one passage I noticed at the time, and I read it to you. This is Hitler. Democracy in the West today is the forerunner of Marxism. He said if people have democracy, they will become Marxists. They will move to the left. And he was absolutely right. What he was afraid of was that if people understood society, then they would demand justice, and that would threaten the people who supported the fascist movement. Very, very wonderful confirmation, because you see, I do believe that democracy is the thing really began to change. And I know all the imperfections of the post-war Labour government. I mean, nobody more critical of the Labour Party than I am, but by God, when the health service was introduced, everybody was entitled to free health care without any regard to their wealth. Now that we take a little for granted. You see, that's the right thing to do. It wasn't just that we helped people their health, but everybody knew it was right. The health of the nation was in the national interest, and we got that all out of the war thinking, because in wartime, there are no economics come into it. I mean, when you bomb Berlin, you don't stop because you run out of money in the current quarter. You do whatever has to be done to win the war. And that principle is the principle that should be applied to the needs at home. And you see, when I think about this, I don't claim to be an academic like the professor who launched this debate this afternoon, but the more I think about it, the more I realise that the one way in which the power of the wealthy was eroded peacefully without bloodshed when they got the vote. Because with the vote, people voted for municipal schools, municipal fire brigades, municipal houses, municipal health of some kind, and municipal museums, municipal art galleries. And that advance of democracy, with all its uncertainties and imperfections, did give us an indication of the way in which we could move forward. And it is for that reason, you see, that Mrs. Thatcher and Reagan in America mounted a massive counter-revolution against democracy. That's what it was. Don't make any mistake about it. Thatcher understood the Labour movement far better than we do ourselves. She knew it rested in three things. It rested in trade unionism,